Hi everyone, I hope you are having a great day, and today I wanted to sit down and go through my infertility journey. I promised this in a previous video, and I know that when I was going through my infertility that these videos and Instagram and just other people sharing their stories, it just made me feel less alone. And talking about my infertility was not something I was super comfortable with when I went through the first time with my twin girls. Now it's a little bit different because of all of the women that share their stories. I know that I'm not broken and that I'm not my body is not a failure. It's just it just works differently than most women. So my husband and I have been trying to build our family. We've been building our family since 2008. It took us about a year to get pregnant with my daughter Emma. I was 27 when I got pregnant with her. And we did it we were able to get pregnant naturally without any help. And it did take us a full year, which is what they tell people. Look, it'll take your body a full year to prepare itself. And some people get pregnant right away, but don't worry about it unless it's taken longer than a year. So I had not had my cycle in 3 months and had no clue I was pregnant. Besides a few symptoms, I was really tired and I had very tender breasts, and I thought that my cycle was coming. So you got to understand, for somebody who only has a cycle 4 times a year, I wasn't very in tune with my body, except for those few little identifiers. So I thought I was getting my cycle. It never came. I had these symptoms for like a week. And so I thought, well, you know, maybe this means I'm pregnant. So I went and bought a pregnancy test, took the pregnancy test. It was positive. We were over the moon. Had a risk-free pregnancy with the exception of me being diabetic, gestational diabetes. And she was born and beautiful and no complications. Had her, just a few days before my 40 weeks by C-section. So I wanted to start pretty soon after the 6-month mark for my daughter. So I wanted my kids to be close in age, and I also sort of had in the back of my mind that this may not be as easy for you as you anticipate. So I went to one of my checkups with my doctor and kind of shared with her our wishes, and she said, okay, we'll try for 6 months. If it doesn't work, then come back and we'll try some medication. So I did just that. So when Emma was about a year old, I started on Clomid because of course I did not get pregnant. But I was still nursing my daughter. I nursed her for a year. But I had not gotten my cycle back after I weaned her. And anyways, when she was about a year old, I started on Clomid. We did 3 failed rounds of gradually increased doses of Clomid before I was referred to the in-house fertility department at my OB's office. So with the in-house fertility department, it was made up of 2 nurses who it was overseen by one of the other OBs in that practice that had a sort of a specialty in fertility medication. So there wasn't a lot of testing for me, but Matt was tested, my husband. he had a sperm analysis and some blood work done. And it was at that point that we knew that he was completely healthy. They look at the way that the sperm is shaped, the way that it moves, if it moves in the right direction, and of course the count size. And he scored above average on all of those. So we knew that it was my hormonal imbalance that was causing the issues. But at that point, they didn't do any testing. We didn't really know what was causing it. They chalked it up to anovulation, where my body's just not ovulating, which is causing me not to have cycles. So there we did 3 months of medication where they would start my period with an oral medication. I would take Clomid, and then the first 2 cycles we just allowed my body to do what it does. And and then Matt and I would have a certain date range where we would need to work on our end to try and make the egg become fertilized. Of course, there's failures with both of those. And so then we did 1 cycle where orally medicated to start my cycle. Then I took the Clomid, and then I was given a trigger shot to release the eggs, or the egg. And they monitor all of that with a vaginal ultrasound. So anyways, and then after it's triggered, then Matt and I would have our day count, our days where they would want us to cover our bases. And I did that 1 or 2 times. I can't remember. 1 or 2 cycles. And then it was on that very next cycle that we decided to do the injectable medications. So again, oral medications to start my cycle. You start off with maybe 10 days of injections. It's either 7 or 10 days of injections. And I went, and then you go in to have the vaginal ultrasound to see if it worked. And they ended up having me do a total of 14 days of injections until I got to a point where I had mature follicles. I knew I had at least 3. We triggered the release, which means all 3 of those eggs would have been released. And then I came in 24 or 48 hours later for an intrauterine insemination. Now, this was just a trial to see if it worked, the IUI. They didn't do any testing to see if I had hostile cervical mucus or anything like that, which is something I learned about once I went through my 2nd round of infertility treatments. But it was just a trial, and it worked. We got pregnant with the twins, and we were over the moon, of course. And so the twins got here. It was a very difficult pregnancy for me because I was working full time. I did have gestational diabetes again with the twins, which complicated things even more. And I said this in my previous video about being pregnant with twins, that it's just a scary experience. And there's a lot of unknown, and there aren't that many people that you can go to as a resource for, and there are just not that many women that you know off the cuff to go to as a resource for, what do I do about this? Or a multiple pregnancy is just so different than a singleton pregnancy. So there just weren't a lot of resources, and I didn't have a ton of time to do the research or to go. We do have a Moms and Multiples group in my city. I didn't have time to go to those meetings and ask those women, so I was just sort of going through it on my own. And anyways, I think that sort of the worry and anxiety made it a lot more difficult of a pregnancy. So I got through the pregnancy, we got through the newborn stage, and it wasn't until the twins were probably around 14 months old maybe that I went to Matt and said, I don't feel complete. I feel like there are more, more children in our future, and I want to try for a fourth. And it took him a couple of months, because we were just coming out of the fog of having two babies at one time. And, I wasn't nursing them anymore. I wasn't, having to do any of that. We could go out to eat as a family, and it wasn't chaotic, and they were getting to that cute age where they were interacting with us more, and their personalities were coming out, and I think he just wanted to enjoy that for a little bit longer before he came to a decision. So it wasn't until they were about 18 months old that he agreed, and so we decided to start, and we were just going, and because of nursing twins, I had dropped all of that infertility weight that I had put on from the medication. So my cycles had returned. I was eating very healthy. So, I had I wasn't as heavy, and so I felt a lot better about my health status than previously. So I said, well, let's give it a few months, just doing it on our own and see if anything happens. So we did that for, I would say, until the girls were maybe 2 years and 4 months. It was that fall after their second birthday that we had been trying for quite a while, and nothing was happening. And so I knew going to fertility medication would mean our chances would go up of having another set of twins. But I also knew that my age I was creeping up in age, and I was 33 at the time, and I was 34. And anyways, I just knew that we were going to need help. So we went to my OB. I think it was during my annual checkup with her that maybe in August. And I told her that we had been trying to have another baby, and of course it wasn't working, and I didn't understand because I had cycles, and while they were really long cycles, they were 45 days, it just wasn't working. So she started me on a newer fertility medication called letrozole, which I believe is a breast cancer drug from what I read about it. But it was proven to work for women who were not responsive to Clomid. So I did 6 cycles of different doses of the letrozole. And each cycle I'd go in and have a blood test to see if I ovulated, and each cycle was a failure. And I wish at that moment I would have taken the reins and sort of said, okay, after 2 or 3 failed cycles, let's take this to the next level. But I didn't. And so we finished out the 6 months. So I think that was September, October, November, December, January, February. February when I was like, okay, I've had enough. And so in March, I was referred over to a specialist. It took a couple of weeks to get in to see him, and we used the April cycle as our test, our control, I guess, is what you call it. So they tested my blood, they tested me at different intervals throughout the cycle. They tested Matt again, found out Matt was a high performer. Anyway, so we came to this conclusion. That's when I learned that, yes, I do not ovulate on my own. And when I do, it's sporadic and rare for me to ovulate on my own. And so there's no real way for me to catch that. I also learned I have PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and you can Google it and read about it. That is what I have. It causes a slew of problems, but this is what was causing my infertility. And it's also the reason why I think I retain all this weight when I go on the fertility medicine. So from the time that I started the letrozole with my OB's office until I went and saw them, I had put on 20 pounds, which is a lot of weight. And weight can affect, it can sort of propel the PCOS into a more active state. So the fertility medicine was causing me to gain the weight, which was then counteracting its effects on me. So we started controlled cycles with where they would give me oral medication to start my cycle. At certain days during the cycle, I would take the letrozole at a higher dose, and then I was given days for Matt and I to cover our bases. So I did that for one cycle. And then on my second cycle is where they tested my cervical mucus, and it was determined that my cervical mucus was an unfriendly environment for sperm. So with the second cycle, we decided to go with IUI. We did 3 more cycles of just letrozole, the oral medication to start my cycles, the letrozole, and then the IUI. On that 4th cycle, I went in and I said, I'm done with the letrozole. It is not working. It takes me a really long time to grow the egg. So it's, I was having longer cycles, and the longer your cycle is, the less healthy that egg is. So I said, I want to go to injectables, and I know what that means, and I know that my chances of multiples increases, and this is what I want to do. So I basically went back to my gut instinct, and I just knew the oral medications were not going to work. So he agreed to it. He put me on a very low dose of Gonal-F or Gonal-F. Again, I took medicine to start the cycle. We injected the Gonal-F. I cannot remember how many days we did it. I then had a trigger shot to release the egg. And at that point, I only had 1 egg showing up on my ultrasounds. So we felt really good about it. We were thinking, oh, it's just 1 egg, we'll be fine. And 6 weeks later, we found out we were having this set of twins. And I knew going into it, the ultrasound, I knew it was going to be 2. I just, having gone through a twin pregnancy before, I know how, the symptoms are just a little bit more magnified, and I was really sick. So, I just knew, so I was prepared. I wasn't shocked. I was happy about it. The thought of 5 kids after, so much failure, or so many failed cycles, and my body thinking, oh, this is just never going to work, and it worked, and I feel very fortunate, and I'm scared because 5 kids is a lot of kids, but I can't help but think of how blessed I am to have been given 5 kids when it really could have been none. So I'm just so grateful for the medicine and the technology to allow me the opportunity to be a mom. I'm almost 33 weeks pregnant, And I am happy, and I am over the moon, and I can't believe that after all of the trials we've been through, we're gonna have 5 kids. And I feel very overly blessed. And I think that it's a huge signifier to me of the responsibility that has been placed in our hands. And I take the responsibility of that very seriously. So much so that before we found out we were having 5 kids, I decided that I was going to leave my career behind and stay at home with my kids, because by God, if it was that difficult to get them, maybe that's a sign that I need to focus on them as much as I can. So that's what I'm doing. We have our C-section date scheduled for somewhere between the 37, 38 week mark, and it's all getting very real. So if you're going through your infertility right now, or you're just trying to conceive and you're trying to find out more information about infertility treatments, know that you are by no means alone. There are so many women going through this process, and there are so many women who have different issues that they have to overcome in order to conceive, and it can feel like a very lonely process. And I hope this video is proof that you don't have to feel alone, and that there is a community that exists for everybody to kind of lean on each other for support. So I will keep all of you in my prayers, of those of you that are trying to conceive or going through infertility, as I do most every time that it comes to my brain to think about. And I wish you all luck. And if you have any questions, if your journey is similar to mine, I don't know if I can answer all infertility questions, but I definitely can answer those about PCOS, or women who are not able to ovulate. Feel free to send me a private message or an email, or leave it down below, and we can start a conversation. Thanks so much. I hope you all have a great day.